wrong computer. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bookends author round circle, author chat, whatever you want to call it. We've got quite a few authors coming, and there's still more people coming in all the time. And what we're going to do tonight is just, we've got some of our members on as well as the authors, and we will just ask the authors some questions. Anyone can jump in at any time with any comments or questions. But what we'll do first of all is we will just have a look. We'll just ask the authors to tell us about the current book, the last book that they published, and if they can, I know it's not always possible, but if they can, give us a little insight into what they're writing next. So we will start. I'm just going to do these at random. We'll start with Kim. Do you want to tell us a bit, Kim? Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for kicking off with me. I'm not at all nervous. I do have a big gin.
On the spot.
We're all glad it was you, Kim.
Yeah, I've got a big gin, so I'm okay. My latest book is called Sunshine and Second Chances, and I thought I had a copy of it behind me, but let me grab a copy. It's a really big copy. I don't know if you can see that. That's the cover. It isn't this big if you buy it. It's just
love it. Large print.
Yeah, that's for people that can't see very well. So it's Sunshine and Second Chances. It's set in the Algarve in Portugal, and if it's okay, I'll quickly read out the blurb for it, because the blurb's so much better than me. So it's never too late for second chances. Liv wants her friends to think she has the perfect life, but honestly, she's running on empty. Desperate for a break from her needy family, Liv is determined that as she and her 3 lifelong fell on a beach at sunrise 29 years before to celebrate this milestone together. And what better place to celebrate than a gorgeous villa in the Algarve? They'll enjoy the stunning beaches, picturesque fishing towns and glorious climate, and maybe be spoiled by the gorgeous Eduardo, who's making one particular heart unexpectedly flutter. Liv's friends can't wait to escape with her. Debs is newly single, Fiona is caring for her mum, and Samantha is grieving. But does time away make the heart grow fonder? Is the thought of returning to reality just too hard to bear? Is what they have really all there is to life? It begins as a reunion in the sunshine, but little do the 4 friends know what life-changing decisions they'll all be making before their flight home. So it is a heartwarming, feel-good summer read about friendship, about love, about second chances. And that's Sunshine and Second Chances.
Great.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And what can you tell us anything about what you're doing next?
Oh God, yeah, I've got so much on the go, it's untrue. I need to focus, I really do need to focus. My next book, I'm having the cover designed at the moment, and it's going to be called, I keep forgetting the name actually, Moonlight Over Muddleford Cove. And it's set in a fictional village called Muddleford in Dorset, which is based on Muddyford, if anybody's ever heard of Muddyford, which is somewhere where I used to spend a lot of my childhoods. A lot of my childhood even, I only had the one. But yeah, it's about a young girl called Nellie Wagstaff who inherits a house from a great auntie Lil, and she goes back, and it goes through why she's going back there, and there is a certain vet that makes her heart go a flutter. So again, it's another feel-good, sort of heartwarming, romantic comedy. I hope there's a few funny bits in it. Made me laugh anyway. But yeah, that's Moonlight Over Muddleford Cove, and I'm hoping that should be out. I'm hoping to get it up for pre-order at the end of January, and out by the end of March.
Great. We all need a bit of humour, don't we? Especially in a new year when everything's a bit uncertain. So I'm sure that will go down very well. So thanks for that, and we'll come back to you for more questions shortly. So next, Regine, do you want to tell us a little bit about your latest book and what you're working on at the minute?
Well, I've just published Found Vision, which is the prequel to my novella, the first crime drama, Double Vision. The tagline is "Felt vision is a killer born or made." So it's really about two mothers, two kids, and two destinies. So one is the single mother struggling with her teenage son, and she has to face the toughest decision of her life. And then Amanda King, she's a psychic who works with the police, so she's helping solve cases. And she normally locates a missing person, but she faces a race against time to save her own daughter. And so the story, it's about really to explore the age-old debate of nature versus nurture. Is one child more predisposed than the others to become a victim or a murderer? So that's what it's about.
Yeah, and it's a great book. I've read it and I love it. So I can recommend to anyone to go and get that. So what are you working on next? Are you getting anything in the pipeline?
Well, what's in the pipeline is the third book, which would be Deadly Vision, with Amanda solving more cases, but obviously with a twist at the end. But yeah, and
Great.
also I may publish another of my books of short story, which is mixed genre. I enjoyed that. So this time will be a story for each month of the year, as opposed to a story for each letter of the alphabet.
Great.
Oh, I like that idea. That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's my second book. It's a collection of poems. It's called The A to Z of original poems, flash fiction, and short stories.
And Regine, is that the name that you write under?
Yeah, sorry, I write under the name of André Roby.
André Roby.
Yeah, mainly because
I never know what to call her.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sorry,
I never know
what were you
to call
saying, Regine, about why you write under it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, usually Regine is because my family name is Belgium and it's very difficult to say. So I thought most people wouldn't even know how to say it. So I thought it's much easier. And then André is my dad. Robbie is my uncle, who was a war hero. So I thought it's quite fitting to have the two names. It sounds okay in English. It sounds good in French. And I thought, well, it's a tribute to them at the same time. So yeah. That's right.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Did you have a question, Diane? I'm not sure if you got an answer. Did you? She slurps on a glass.
No, I got the answer. Thank
you. All right, that's super. And thanks, Regine, for telling us a bit about your books. So next we'll go on to Daniel Morgan. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what your book that's out and what you're working on, Daniel?
Sure. I don't write under my own name. I write under Morgan Green as a pen name, simply for the fact that last year and the year before I published a string of sci-fi novels with an indie press, and yeah, they were mostly in America, but I used my sort of real name for that, and I wanted to sort of distance myself from it. So I chose my second name as my first name and my favorite color as my second name, and that's pretty much all there is to that. Nothing too exciting, unfortunately. No war heroes in my name. But,
sorry.
No. Oh, you've just overshadowed everybody's name now, haven't you, really? So it's no. So I this year put out 3 novels in a crime series headed by a young female detective called Jamie Johansson. She's a kind of Swedish expat living in England who's got a very famous kind of detective father who is the classic kind of hard drinking sort of troubled detective, I suppose, in Sweden, and his kind of legacy hangs over her head a little bit, and she solves sort of 3 worsening cases on the streets of London that really challenge her views of right and wrong. She starts off in the first novel as a kind of very by the book sort of young detective who believes in justice and the justice system. Then she's handed her first murder, and things get kind of worse and worse from there. And
I
3
love that first book. I think
progressively worse cases really kind of push her to question. Oh, good. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's that means a lot. So yeah,
great character.
Thank you. And I really sort of wanted to work into having a series as a kind of character-driven series that really has her transformation at its heart, and the three novels then really chart this kind of descent that she has from injustice to this person who's very troubled and has to sort of live with the real consequences of sort of what she's had to do, and and the rules that she's had to break and that kind of thing. So yeah, the first three novels are very kind of tightly packed. They all take place within about 6 months of each other. So yeah, that kind of sums that up. Really, I don't want to give sort of too much away. Lots of twists and turns, and that kind of thing. Hopefully.
And what are you working on?
Yeah.
What are you working on at the moment?
So the next book in that series is going to see her sort of transplanted back to Sweden, drawn back to Stockholm to solve a crime that her father supposedly solved 2 decades before. A notorious serial killer, one of the biggest kind of collars her father ever made, dies in prison, and then just after his death, a mysterious kind of killer strikes again to the sort of kills of the original killer, which throws into question, whether or not he got the right man. Is it a copycat? What's kind of going on? So she's drawn back there to assist with to assist the Stockholm police with the case, and really, yeah, it just kind of gets drawn into this web of sort of deceit and lies, and it's it's all told from her point of view, but it explores a lot of kind of what her father did, and she has to retrace his footsteps and try and reconnect with a man that she lost touch with sort of decades before, really. So yeah, I mean, it's difficult to explain in full without kind of giving away some of the earlier stuff, but it's sort of a new chapter in the series, so it's a good entry point for new readers as well, hopefully. Which is kind of what I'm going for, a reinvention of it, really. So,
and when does that come out, Daniel?
That's going to be out on January 31st. I'm just in the midst of sort of doing my final edits, and then it's going off to the proofer on January 1st to the advanced readers on the 16th of January, hopefully, fingers crossed. And then, yeah, it'll be out on the 31st on ebook and paperback.
Great, wonderful, thank you for that.
3 novels in 1 year. Right,
Mm-hmm.
And another one on January the 1st. Is that 4 in 1 year that you've written?
So the first one came out on July 16th. The second was October 31st, and the third was the third was October 31st. I don't know. Well, the first one was July 16th, and there was 6 weeks, and there was 8 weeks between them. So I try and write in the kind of 12-week cycle. I got into that habit last year when I was writing sci-fi. We did like 1 novel a month, and since then it's just really kind of just become a bit of an obsession, really, to just kind of write continually. So I can't switch it off, unfortunately.
Another question as well. What word count are you at then for that kind of thing? What sort of word count are you doing for each?
About 100,000.
Yeah, right, okay.
So I try and do 3,000 words a day generally in the week. I try and hit about 15k average per week. That kind of sets me up to 10 weeks, and then I spend full 2 weeks editing, and then it goes off to the proofer then. So
why Sweden? Just a matter of interest. Why Sweden for use Swedish characters? So you've got a background in that?
Yeah, so I work with a company, actually. My day job is as a copywriter, so I work for a company called Ridestore, and they're based in Sweden. They produce ski and snowboard kind of clothing. They're based in Sweden, so I've sort of spent a bit of time there, and I know I'm quite friendly with a lot of people that I work with and things, and they read Scandi Noir kind of very heavily, and I love that landscape, and I like the coldness of it and the kind of the barrenness of it, and I very much admire the way that sort of people like Joe Nesbo and use the landscape almost as a character, and that really kind of gritty, dark, plodding, methodical sort of pace is what I'm really drawn to as a writer. So I've been completely nagging everybody I work with to kind of fact check my grammar, and does this sound like an accurate description of this and that. So I've been very lucky in that sense, and I've just kind of utilized the tools at my disposal really to sort of try and do something a bit more, I don't know, not just a little bit kind of outside my comfort zone really, and just something that I feel is a little bit more pushes me as a writer, but hopefully
so Daniel, can I just ask, you work full-time and you write 3,000 words a day?
I work about 30 hours a week. as a
Wow.
copywriter. I try and write 3,000 words a day, and I do also run a company as well. But that's
Can
kind
you
of just
teach
as a
us
hobby.
all how to be that productive, please?
Yes, please.
It's a combination of a lot of coffee, very little sleep, and generally having no social life. So my friends are all made up.
Right.
Can I ask something about Chris? Chris, you asked Daniel about the word count, and Daniel, you said about 100,000 words. What would that translate into pages?
A4 pages, like when you.
Yeah, how many pages would it be approximately?
pages?
That sort of word count.
Well, a Kindle normalized pages, or just on my word processor that I'm looking
Just
at.
whatever. I suppose. I suppose I judge a book by how many pages rather than the word count.
Well,
Obviously, authors are doing word count.
Paperback book is normally about 320, 340 pages for 100
Yeah.
words. That's
334. This is my second
Right.
book, 334. There, I think it's 326
So it's
in my
around
first
about
one.
right. Yeah, yeah. That's
Just mid kind of 300s. So,
Yeah. That makes more sense to me, saying how many pages rather than the word count. Yeah.
And I
Okay.
just ask you as well, the fact that in Sweden most of them speak English, I mean, that's quite a good thing because you've got like
well,
a ready-made
hopefully so.
market
I mean,
now, haven't you?
the way that I've kind of done it in this, because I'm reading The Chestnut Man at the moment, which was written in Danish kind of originally, and that's been translated. So you expect them to be speaking in Danish in your head. You're kind of like, yeah, I'm reading the translated version of it, but the translator is actually British, and she uses words like bloody heck and things like that, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of a Britishism to be so translated from Danish. So it's so I've tried to write it a little bit more in a way that kind of speaks to the way that Swedish people speak, so a little bit more formal. But when she first goes to Sweden, the sort of detective that she works with says to her, would you like to speak in Swedish, or do you want to speak in English? And she's kind of quite offended, like, oh, we'll speak in Swedish. And he goes, oh, okay then. And that kind of one thing is in Swedish, but then it's translated into English, and then they kind of start going on. It says, oh, and then he carried on in his native language, but then it's written sort of all in English, except for when somebody has an outburst or sort of says something sort of like a new character comes in, the first thing they say would be in Swedish with the translation, just to kind of try and remind the reader and give them a little bit of kind of sense of the place, really, hopefully. So it's I mean, I'm trying something new. I mean, I'm sure, like you guys, I have no clear idea of what sets a good book apart from a great book in the mind of a reader when they read it. And we're all trying to reinvent within a very small kind of bubble, I feel, a lot of the time. And it's a case of just sort of trying something new, and if you can give the reader just a little kind of sense of kind of novelty again within a genre that they've kind of read and read and read and read, I think that's kind of in my mind what I'm going for. And from the crime writers I've spoken to, they're going for it as well. It's like, how do you reinvent the wheel? So
great. That's wonderful. Thank you for explaining your writing process. Now we've got, if just before I move on to the next person, we've got about 4 people who cannot make it tonight, and they sent in a little bit of. I've just actually got a message from Chris. Chris, sorry, I had to drop out. My kids are being a nightmare at bedtime, and I had to help my wife, hoping to log on again later. That's from Chris MacDonald. Anyway, so hopefully Chris will be back later. But as I said, there was about 4 authors who couldn't make it this evening, and they sent me a little bit of information. So I'll just read one of them now. The first one is Carrie Smith. She said, just a bit of information about me for the Zoom, but I can't attend. I've just published my first full-length original novel called Chasing Shadows. It's a coming-of-age story set in a town that's full of secrets. The main characters are 18 in their last year of high school, but the problems they're dealing with are not your everyday school drama, for the most part anyway. She said, it's my hope to write at least 2 more books in the series. So while book 1 is very much a standalone book, I've left some clues along the way for the rest of the series, if that makes any sense. As for me, well, I'm Irish, but I'm currently in Spain with my parents, and usually as I work as a carer in the UK. My long-term client I'm not sure if that passes away at the start of the year or passed away at the start of the year. Followed soon, I must have been passed away at the start of the year. Followed soon after by my beloved grandmother, and then lockdown hit, and I took advantage of the isolation here in Spain to finally see if I could actually see a book project through from start to finish. She said it was a bit of a bucket list item before her next birthday. She's always been a reader, started out young and fell in love with so many authors of all genres. She could never pick a favourite. She loves to reread books, and between the 2 Kindles and actual books, it's not unusual for her to be reading 4 or 5 books simultaneously. So that's Carrie, I'm not sure if it's Smythe or Smith. It's S-M-Y-T-H, so C-A-R-R-I-E and then S-M-Y-T-H. So what we'll do now is we will go on to Noelle. Do you want to tell us a bit about your current and next book, Noelle?
Yeah, once I unmute myself. My name is Noelle, and I've published 2 books this year, Dead Wrong and Dead Perfect. 1 more chapter, HarperCollins UK. And like Kim, I'll take the simple way of describing it by reading the blurb. The tagline is, there's a serial killer on the hunt and his prey is closer than you think. And it starts out with a murdered woman. When a disfigured body is found in a local park, DC Maggie Jameson soon realizes she's dealing with no ordinary killer. The murder victim has been mutilated to resemble someone else, someone Maggie knows all too well, her friend, Dr. Kate Maloney, a determined detective. Maggie is determined to keep her safe, but Kate is already struggling with a threatening stalker, and now Maggie fears her life is in danger. Who else would want to harm Kate, and why else would the killer be turning his victims into exact replicas? Can Maggie find the depraved killer, or will Kate become his next living doll? So that's my stuff. And they're all my ebooks are 99p if you want to go buy them, anyone. Just saying. And as for what I'm doing now, I'm currently editing the 4th book, Dead Secret. There's a theme there in case you haven't noticed. And it comes out in April in ebook and July, I think, in paperback. And I finished writing the 5th book. Might be the last book, depends on whether I get another contract or not. So I've kind of got two endings for it. And yeah, that's what I'm doing right now.
That's really interesting that you've got to do 2 endings because you don't know if you'll get another contract. I'd never even thought about that happening. So that's interesting to know. And they are on my to be read list.
The reason why is because I kind of have to write 2 endings for it because I always lead on to what the next book is going to be. My final chapter is always what the next book is going to be about. Right. So I kind of can't do that if obviously I don't get another contract. Yeah. So, but I've also got ideas for other books. So it's not like that's the end of my writing career.
Great. That's good.
I hope.
That's good to know. And Kim has put on, not only do I get to work with Noelle all day long, I get to read her crime novels too, which are absolutely brilliant. It's a great word from Kim. And Sharon has said agreed. So it's nice to
look, my fan club is here. It's fantastic.
That's great. So thanks for that, Noelle. So next we will go to who should we have next? Rob. You're a writer, Rob, aren't you? Rob Scraggs.
I'm sorry. Can I ask a question before we?
Of course you can. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, what kind of delay are you looking at when you finish a book to when it comes out? Because you said there's 2 out now, but the 4th one is coming out in April. So what is the 3rd one?
Oh no, this is my first book was out last year. My debut was out in 2019. So I mean, this book I finished writing last December and it only came out in October.
Okay.
the fourth book, which I'm editing now, I submitted in June, the end of June. So it all depends on my publisher's schedule and how long they take to edit my books or how much editing is required.
Oh, cool. So is it like, do you do a lot of the editing yourself, or do you have kind of an editor you work closely with? I mean, I'm really interested in the process.
Yeah, I do my own edits, and then I send it out to a few beta readers to kind of pick out any plot holes or anything like that. And then I submit it to my publisher, my editor at One More Chapter, and she kind of goes through it, sends me back kind of suggestions in terms of, you know, the structure and everything. Then it goes back again to be copy and line edited. Then it's proof edited. But I very rarely see the proof. I kind of have to trust that they don't. Then it's not me. I get to point the finger at them. I can say, oh, yeah. But yeah, there's a bit of a process that goes into it. Like the fourth book, if I have it back, they said by mid to end of January, but I'll have it back. I think I'm quite like you. I kind of don't sleep. I, you know, spend my spare hours. I'm quite disciplined in terms of once I finish work, I'm in the writing seat. And you know, I set my own deadlines. So like, even though they've given me the end of January, I will finish this by January 4th and it will be back with them because I want to see the back of it. And I've got the fifth book that I want to edit and send off to the beta readers as well, because that will be out probably October of next year as well. So
Noelle, can I just say, Noelle is the most disciplined and focused person that I know.
I have no lying.
I mean, it's definitely a good trait. All the people I know who have kind of, you know, gone on to sell lots of books and write lots of great ones, you know, they all have this like focus in common where they're just like, yeah, I'm obsessed with writing as like a craft, as a concept, and you know, it's I think you know, you definitely improve your chances if you just jump in with both feet and just, you know, make it your life. Well, that's what I'm hoping anyway. Otherwise, I've just given up everything for nothing.
Great. So we will now go on to our next author, which is Chris Berry. Hello, Chris. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your latest book and your next one, if you can?
Yeah, okay, will do. I'm from Leeds area, but I'm from Hull originally, so Kingston upon Hull. So I'm a big Yorkshireman, Yorkshire through and through, and a big rugby league fan. So when I coming to come up with my first novel, because I write, just to give you a background, I write for the Yorkshire Post every Saturday. I write feature stories about farming, and 15 years for the Yorkshire Post. Last Thursday I published, I was a magazine pub, and I'd written a few books since. I went freelance 12 years ago. I've been writing autobiographies for people. So what I've been writing, I'll just show you, just to give you an idea. I wrote autobiography of Joe Longthorne, if you remember the singer, Joe Longthorne, very famous in the late 80s, early 90s, unfortunately passed away last year. Then last year I had Tony Christie's autobiography out as well. And I've done one on Coronation Street, the guy who played Les Battersby, Bruce Jones in that. And I've done a couple of other contracted books for people who've just asked me to write their biographies to do with farming stuff. And the latest one of those came out. This is actually my latest book. This came out 2 weeks after my latest novel, and that's Farmer Chris, which is a chap who's on a TV program at the moment called Celebs on the Farm. And he's the judge, a bit like Alan Sugar. He throws the guys off the program. So anyway, that's a little bit of background. I started writing my first novel because I've written short stories. I've written local pantomimes. Oh yes, I have.
It's behind you.
No, you haven't.
For our local village. I've written poetry as well. I wrote poetry. That's how I'm probably like you guys. You know, if you're a writer, you're a writer. You start writing, and you don't know that's what's hit you. You do. You know, I was writing as a kid poems and songs and all sorts of stuff from being about 12 or 13 years old. Prior to that, I was playing Subbuteo, and I was coming up with my own fictional characters of Subbuteo football characters and teams, and I was putting together my own little programs for my FA Cup finals. So I was always writing, doing things, and I'd had this idea of, could I discipline myself to write a novel some years ago now, and I started it then as a kind of boys' own. I've written children's stories as well, not published by the way, just with my kids, as nighttime stories for them as well. So everything I've done has been about writing. Out last year, that was my first novel. It used rugby league as the backdrop, because I wanted to use something that was a backdrop that I thought would be really good, that hadn't been used that often before. And I'd also been a big reader of Dick Francis. So, and Dick Francis was what got me started in crime thriller fiction, because I'd read, I don't know what it was, maybe about sort of when I was in my early 30s, I started reading more avidly of novels. Prior to that, it was all newspapers, magazines, and whatever that I was doing things for as well. But I went down to my local library, and this wasn't the book that I got, Bone Crack. It was the hardback version from my local library. In fact, I actually picked this one up. The reason why I've got this here now, and I'm not talking about my books yet, but I'm getting there. But Bone Crack came out, was with the first book I read of Dick Francis, and it was absolutely brilliant. And I was happened to be in a restaurant come pub in the centre of Leeds last year, or maybe it was early this year before lockdown. And it was one of these restaurants where they have all these secondhand books in, the bookcases all around. And where my wife and I were sat, there was Bone Crack, and I thought, that was my first crime thriller I read. And I thought, it's there, I've got to read it. And I started reading it then, actually, whilst we were waiting for the meal to come. I didn't buy it, and I bought it. It was £1.50, and the bloody cover price on this from all those years ago is 35p. Anyway, so, and that got me, that I was always interested, but that was what got me started. And then I read a lot more crime thrillers and the like. I happen to think that rugby league would be a good genre to use, because sport can be used, as Dick Francis has used with horse racing for many years. And I knew that if you're looking at a marketplace, if you use anything to do with rugby league as a sport behind it, you're never going to be a million sellers. So it's no big deal about that, because, I would guess that most of us that are here are at the sort of grassroots of where we are, in terms of sales. But I may be wrong. Some of you may be absolutely fantastic with sales and or whatever. But I thought, well, I'll use something that I have a good grounding in. I've always been to watch it, so I know the grounds, I know the people, I know the kind of atmosphere, know the kind of things. And I knew that I could use that in such a way as Dick Francis does with horse racing. And I thought, well, I'll use that, and we'll get... When I started the book was probably about 17 years ago, when my kids, boys, years ago, I got the idea that this could be good, because I was talking to an author of romantic fiction who I happened to be interviewing to do the story for the Yorkshire Post. And she said, she was a farmer. And she said, she said, what about your book? And she said, has it got any sex in it? And I went, no, it's not really. So, and she said, well, sex sells, So I thought, I'm up for a bit of that. Why don't we try and organise something that's got that kind of same feel that Dick Francis has got in his novels and the like, and go that way. So I changed the thing completely. And then, just 2 years ago, because I write for Great Northern Books, who I've written the autobiographies for, I was able to, get them to put in towards launching my book. And so I rewrote Tough Season. If you're writing it down, Andy, Great Northern Books. They're based.
Writing down
I can give you the
sex cells. That's what he's writing down.
give you the number. Don't worry. I know what we're doing. It's no problem. But the whole thing with Tough Season was I could use the backdrop of this chap called Greg Duggan, who is a 6'3" loose forward, pretty loose in lots of ways actually, who is married, got kids, but he unfortunately gets a little bit of the stardom sort of thing wrapped up in his head as well, and goes a little bit not off the rails, but you know, just goes off, let's say, right? Okay. What happens is the full story of the book is about what happens to the club. We all know that thrillers are about, you know, either money, sex, revenge, greed, whatever. They're the things that are behind.
Or all of them.
What's that? Well, I don't know all. Them, yeah. Most have that kind of sort of feel to them, don't they? Which is a bit like Daniel was saying before. You know, how do you reinvent the wheel? I'm using a sport of rugby league to do it a little bit as a different.
So what's coming next, Chris?
Well, this next one that was Tough Season in the Sun that came out about just before Christmas. This one, I set the first one in the northern towns. So that's, if you like, in between Yorkshire and Lancashire. Because if you try and sell a book as well as write a good book, then if you say that the club is based in Yorkshire, then you're going to lose any Lancastrians that might read it to do with rugby league, and likewise the other way around. So you've got to make sure it's set in a Pennine club, in order that way you can make sure you keep your audience for the whole thing. Now that book leads to a massive thing right at the end, and then this leads to the sequel, which is now set in Lanzarote. Now, I thought, if you know anything about the sport of rugby league, one of the things about that is they're always coming up with daft ideas, or actually very good ideas, but they're trying to do things with the sport and trying to promote the game more widely. If you've seen on television this year, unfortunately, the very good thing that they've got with Toronto, the Toronto Wolfpack, also, yes, well done, Noel. Toronto Wolfpack. The Toronto Wolfpack was a great idea, and great in principle, and absolutely fabulous to do, but unfortunately, along with COVID, has meant that it's not been possible. But I thought, I've been to Lanzarote several times, been to the Canary Islands many times, and I just thought Lanzarote would be a great backdrop for the whole thing, because it lends itself to a lot of other problematic things. And if you then do the research and say, well, you find out what's going to be the problem with the story, what's going to be the background to it that's going to be the problem this time. In the first book, it was all about the ground. This one, it's in line with, I don't know whether you know, but Lanzarote is part of the UNESCO World Biosphere status. It's got that the whole island. You know, you get World Biosphere status throughout. Well, it is wrapped up in the problems that come when you allow things to be done on an island that could then negate your World Biosphere status.
And what comes next, Chris?
Lots of shenanigans.
What comes next?
Next one is Tough World is next. Again, like Noel said, you maybe see a theme in this, right? But Tough World is using, there's a major rugby league in England, and I'm using that as the backdrop, but mine's not set in England, it's going to be set in Australia for the next one.
Right.
And my son happens to live there, my eldest son, in Byron Bay, so expect Byron Bay references next year. And,
so you can get a trip to Australia on the expenses, can you, Chris?
Well, I'm hoping I'll get a free one to Lanzarote somewhere along the way, and I bloody know, do you? Anyway, it's a bit long with everybody, but there you go. I tried to give you
That's great. Well, thanks for giving us the update on all that. It's really really interesting to know. I'm now going to just tell you, by the way, Kaz Finley should be with us tonight. She just released a new book called Liverpool.
Hang on. Joe.
Yeah.
Joe. Andy wants
Sorry,
to ask
go on,
a question.
Andy.
Joe, can I ask a question, Chris?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah. First of all, Yeah, I'm Leeds born and bred, and I've lived in Preston for the last 20 years. So I relate to the bit about the Pennines, but I just see myself on missionary work.
Yes.
But I suppose the question I want to ask you is, I'm a big rugby league fan, but I wonder, do you have to understand rugby league
No,
to
you
enjoy
don't.
your
And
book?
that's the whole thing. I've tried to make sure that, well, how I've defined the rugby league action that's in the book is through commentary. So it's either in the first book I used radio commentary, in the second book I've used like Sky TV commentary, but I've called it Cloud TV, and so it's something there that, generally speaking, other people, and to be honest with you, that's what I've got back from a lot of people, is that you don't have to be a rugby league fan or nutcase or whatever you call it, in order to enjoy it. And you can, if there are a few little things where you don't know what a position is of a player, I've not tried to play that heavy either. I've tried to make sure that it's all about action. I was very fortunate. I had another lady that I'd interviewed about something else, and she'd had a couple of novels out herself. And so I used her as one of my readers originally on the first book. And her comment was, I just want to get to the action. I want to get to the game. And so it hopefully captivates that. But there is a lot more. It's not just about rugby league. Right. A bit like, that's why I keep saying it's like a Dick Francis kind of book. Yeah. In the sense that it uses that basically as its backdrop, a bit like Daniel uses, sort of Swedish stuff for a backdrop as well. You're using that, really what you're trying to get across is your story, but just using a different canvas to approach it all. Yeah.
So the Rhinos don't win.
They're not even in it, because all of the clubs are in it. All the clubs are in it are fictitious names and clubs as well. Anyway, so and the great thing about using Lanzarote.
From memory, Joe's a Wigan fan, aren't you, Joe?
I am. But we'll come back to that, because we've still got people who haven't spoken, so we'll let them just have a word. But we will come back if anybody else has got any other questions. Let's say there's a couple more people who couldn't make it tonight. Kaz Finley just told me. Sorry, what was that, Chris? My internet's gone a bit slow. Everyone's frozen. I will continue and hope that you can all hear me.